Hi, welcome to yet another video web chat. From Divination Counseling Service, I'm Colleen Schmidt. Today, we're looking at Tarot 3, or the court cards. So before we begin, let's look at a deck of cards. A tarot deck, as you can see, has 78 cards in it. And we know that the playing cards, the cards that we play games with, comes from this deck. But there are only 52 of them. So there are, as we know, 22 major arcana cards, which if you would like any more information on any of the major arcana, check out the website at divinationcounselingservice.org. I have pages on every major arcana. This today still does not make 78 cards. So we're still missing 4 cards. Or we have 4 extra cards, I should say. Besides the major arcana, we have pages. Pages are one of the court cards, and they don't exist in the playing cards. In the playing cards, when you play gin or gin rummy, you have a pinochle, you have a king, a queen, and jacks. Well, we have king and queens, we have knights, but we also have pages. So let's start with what does it mean to be a page. A page is news. That's it. It can also be small children, very young children. But when most people are getting readings, they have bigger questions, and oftentimes their children are more of a benign issue. So I always tell people it always means news first. So more importantly, when you're reading it, unless you're reading about a child, your page is going to be news. Okay? So each page, the news relates back to its suit. Okay? And we also have knights. And knights can be teenagers or young people, people who are more reactive. It's much more emotional, so they're not supposed to be as mature. But I've seen in work situations where it's the people that work under the person that it was in question. So that would be true, like I guess they're called subordinates. The people under you would also be of that caliber, the knight. Okay, so with that said, then the knight, to me, as a person who reads all the cards, and I want them to mean everything they can, the knight is also state of mind. More often than not, it's state of mind. So here, I'm going to tell you it's almost 50-50 as a reader. Then we have the kings and the queens. And the kings and the queens are, of course, men and women. However, some people don't identify with their gender, and you have to be open-minded. This is the 21st century when you're reading cards. If somebody identifies as a male, they're going to show up as a male. If they don't identify with a gender, and I've seen that, it just makes for an interesting reading, because then you have to look at every card and figure, well, that's you, or that's not you, and apply it to the players. The 21st century, it makes it so that not only are genders not important or an issue, but the way that the old-time people read cards in terms of how they applied those energies. In other words, if you were a sword, you were probably a black person. If you were a wand, you would be Hispanic, and then Asian, and as a pen. That we don't do anymore. Okay. Well, this is America, and it's a melting pot. But I, as a reader, can honestly tell you, having read many nationalities, that I have seen cold, hard people, which would be represented by swords, that were very white. And I've seen marshmallowy, soft black people. So you can't, which is a cup, so you can't really assign that. Now, I'm not saying that if there's some woman out there that wants to see what her next boyfriend might look like, or vice versa, a man who might wants to see what the next partner will look like. Sure, go ahead, use the cards. Maybe your next partner can be described depending. So, that's up to you. In any event, the queens are always women and they're mature. Although I've read for younger people, and since it's their cards, I've used, or I've seen them show up as kings or queens. But again, I don't like to tie myself too much to age any more than I like to tie myself too much to the gender specifics or even to the coloring, which I don't identify with at all. So as we become more evolved as readers, we're going to open up how we see kings and queens and knights and pages. And I'll give you an example. A queen can also be seen as kind of a message to a situation. Okay, like this is an ongoing situation. The Queen of Swords, great example. She is, I'll often say to a client, spiritual strength through prolonged struggle. Okay, so it's a struggle. It's a situation. By the same token, a king could be a situation, a company, a corporation. A king of sword reverse could be abusive, period. Abuse is abuse. Doesn't have to come from an individual. So I really strongly advise for all of you out there that are interested in reading that even as I describe these cards as people, please be open-minded and know that I have been open-minded about how they can also be read in someone's cards. Okay? So now I'm going to go through each of the suits. And we're going to start with the swords. The sword of page is, of course, not news you want to get. It's stressful. It's a pain in the neck. Whereas in reverse, I refer to that as the compensation card. So here's a case of where reading the cards in reverse actually gives a beautiful flavor to this Knight of Sword this Page of Sword, because the news that you're getting, this page, is compensation, maybe for something that's been going on. Okay? Whereas right side up, a sword, Page of Sword, is stress. When you get, or stressful situation, news about. When you get to the Knight, it becomes better to be upright, because here the sword is using that mental capacity through discipline and structure and focus. And so when you're dealing with a sword upright knight, could be a young person, it could be a child, it could a teenager usually, or college, but somebody who's disciplined, who's focused. Maybe they're really into their sport. Maybe they're looking at going into the military. There's a real focus with this energy, but by the same token, this intense energy, when it's upside down, creates chaos, and it can be very scattered. And I always make the comment that these are children that might bring the police to your door, because they are so active and they are so energetic and impulsive, and they are going to get in trouble if they're not focused into something. So those are the children you definitely want to get involved in some sport. However, you can read that as state of mind. It's a knight. And the state of mind would be either focused and determined, or the state of mind would be chaotic and scattered. Then we move to the Queen. And the Queen of Sword in the right side up is, of course, this independent woman. And independent means she doesn't have to identify with a man. She runs her own show. It means that even if she does have a man in her life, it's not something she identifies with very strongly. She's more focused on her business, her reputation in business. These make really good managers and bosses. They tend to be able to run from a perspective of rational thought rather than emotion. Upside down queen, think of an upside down queen. Here we go with, this is the card that I like. The Queen of Sword upside down is spiritual strength through prolonged struggle. Phew. It's been going on so long, you're like ready to pull your hair out. but you are gaining from it. There is something that you're gaining through the experience. It can also be a woman who's abusive, who has a sharp tongue, who's envious or jealous, who has issues. But more often than not, if you're seeing it in a client and the client happens to be female, we're talking about a long enduring situation that's hopefully creating a stronger person. The energy, however, if you were reading for somebody who's aggravating a client, then it might be somebody who is manipulative, has a sharp tongue, and is nasty. So you have to check out where it falls in the cards and what are the cards around it saying. The King of Swords is very similar. You know, here we go with this. Of course, it doesn't have to be a loner like the woman. The King, however, is somebody who is all about business. And even when they are married to these men, and I've heard women complain, so I know, they're not really involved emotionally. They're still very much usually involved in their work. These are men and women that walk into a place, though, especially men, because I've heard the comments said by men even more than women, that they have an aura about them. You know, they give the almost loudest expression just walking into a room, and they don't have to say a word. Usually it's the stance, the aura. Again, more true of the men than the women. They are good at what they do. However, they are also people who are, how do I say, they're very right to the point, very frank, very right to the point. And oftentimes when you see them in a card reading, particularly the man, it could be somebody that's professional, that's working, that is somehow working on behalf or for that client, lawyers, doctors, surgeons. The same could be said of the Queen of Swords. Okay, but you know, again, that's a very strong, independent woman. And if you're looking at a doctor or a lawyer, you're not thinking about the fact that she's married or not married. So here you have it. The upside down male, the upside down king, however, does not have to relate to a person at all. That's pure abuse. I know I stated it earlier. That's just abuse. Sometimes there's no one even involved in making that happen. It's just that some companies go through these transitions. And the way it works out for the people that have to work in that situation is very abusive to them, you know, working long hours and not really having a life. In any event, king upside down is also somebody who is abusive and nasty, and just as the queen is. And that element of abuse is very tied as a word to this energy because it is abusive. So as we go into the wands, our new thing will be, our new word, we'll have new words, okay? So the wands, it's networking. Yes, making connections, associations. When you deal with the Page of Wands, it's news about maybe something that you wanted to get involved in, a group of people, an association, something maybe even of a social nature. There's a very networking, social quality to the wands. That's one of our keywords for the wand. So as we go get this news and it then becomes an upside down card, it doesn't mean that it isn't happening. What it means is this isn't the right timing, it's a delay. This may not be, and the rest of the cards will tell you, but it might not be the right situation. Delays doesn't mean it won't happen. Doesn't mean you're not going to network. Doesn't mean you're not going to be social. Just means that maybe this wasn't the right group or the right time. Or the group can't get together. They're having a delay. Boy, I see that a lot. Okay. So it's like, you want to start in this new group. You want to get on this new project. Delay. Doesn't mean it's not happening. Then we go to the Knight of Wands. And we're going to bring in a new word that has to do with the wands. And if you think of a wand in the upright position, think about charming and cheerleading and compliments. And if you get to the king and the queen, you're talking about attractive, charming, even manipulative. And I could say that's even probably true of the knight, although it's not always associated that way. When it's upright, you always feel the support of this, because these people, even if they're young people, even if they're knights, are very supportive, and they just make you feel good. Now, in the upside down position, of course, they're upsetting you. They're saying things that are upsetting to you. But I also want to attribute things like the rumor mill could also be in part an association of that Knight of Wand, because you're getting information. It's upsetting you. And it may not even be true. So here comes the other word I want to bring in for wands. They're manipulative, but they can also be deceitful in that manipulation. That manipulation and that charm are wonderful when they're supporting you and when everything you're involved with is the way it's supposed to be. But since it's not always that way, one has to be mindful of those deceptions. So the Knight, the things that you're hearing may not be true. And that deception can also be self-deception. Because remember, Knights are insight. Okay, so rumor mill, maybe it's something that you're kind of going through and the rest of the cards might confirm that. But it could also be you have a teenager at home who is just getting on your last nerve. And all of those things could be happening simultaneously as well. Then it moves us to the King and the Queen. And the King and the Queen are charming and they're wonderful and they're good looking and they're good salespeople. You know, this is selling is so up their alley. But when it's upside down, it could be deceptive. So again, you have to be very careful. When I think of an upside down queen or king in the wands, I think of somebody who's overwhelmed. Really, I think of too much going on. I think that they've lost balance. And that's why maybe they're embellishing or they're even outright lying because they're a little bit on the overwhelmed side. So oftentimes when you see this in the cards, you can always ask the client or the person asking the questions, is there somebody that you just don't trust? And that there you would find the rest of your wands. So now I'm going to move on to the Pentacles, which are the money people, the money thing, okay? And the money thing is and can be related to physical health as well. So think of money as support and think of the health as, you know, a support thing too. You got to feel good also, okay? So I do want to say that. So a page of upright, page of Pentacle also is about good news concerning money or good news about physical health or physical regime, if you will, for those that are dieting or really working for some athletic goal. When it's upside down, it's not so much telling you that it's bad news, it's telling you that you're worrying, You'd have to look at the rest of the cards for the answer to that question. But at this point, I always say, you're worried about money going out or you're worried about something going on. And I do it more as a worry. I don't attribute it immediately to bad news, just an FYI. The Knight of Pentacles is one of my favorite cards in the reverse position. Ironically, when you think of a knight, that's when people do what they're supposed to do. It's the studious child or student, kid. It's those people that don't make waves. And when it's upside down, it's the opposite. Somebody is surprising you. Now, surprising means that they could literally be surprising a birthday or surprising you with something, but it also means that a yes person might have learned how to say no. So that's why I like seeing it in client charts sometimes, because it really gives me the fulfillment of knowing that, yeah, they got teeth. Yes. So the Knight of Pentacles is something that is about surprising people. The Queen and the King are, again, very secure people. They have their feet on the ground. They are security oriented. They both have nice homes, good homes, as well as stable, secure jobs. There is a balance of that with the Pentacles, okay? There's a real balance here of that. These people are quieter. than the Wands, which are very outgoing, and the aura of the Swords. These people are more kind and quiet, and they tend to, maybe hang back a little bit more. Not that they can't be warm and friendly and open and all those things, but they're not always as social. They are, and if they are, it's usually closer to home. So the idea of a pentacle is security, money, that home base. That's a good support system. So if you have a Queen of Pentacles, she's got her feet on the ground, or a King of Pentacles, he's got his feet on the ground. In the case of both, they're usually very good in business, although more women Pentacles I see from business, but realize that construction workers and trades people can also be Pentacles, particularly the male side. The female side, sometimes those are sword women, but in reality, because 21st century, things are changing. Think of people that can work with their hands. They're crafty, but they do prefer very secure jobs. Okay, so, and they're oftentimes, especially in the females, they're assistants, secretaries, administrative assistants. Again, very secure jobs. When these cards are upside down, there is a lack of confidence in oneself, probably financial. Maybe they spend too much money because they think that's important. Maybe they're too materialistic. Maybe they're sick, which is the other thing. When it's upside down, could it be illness? Yes. That man or that woman could be sick, but they could also be spending too much money. They could be, in the case of a man, more than a female, because again, our society's catching up on these things, but a philanderer, a man that needs more than one woman, even if he's married and has a home, and they usually do, he could cheat because his ego needs that other to help him feel that he's all that and a bag of chips. Who knows, Usually, though, there's a lot of money, a lot of issues related to money with the pentacle, or health, because health is a big factor on the pentacles. And that brings us to our final set, which are the cups. And the Page of Cups is just a fabulous card, because it really means that something that's making your heart happy it's all soft and smushy. It's your heart is in a good place when you receive this news. It doesn't mean you didn't get a job or something. You can still get a job and have that, but it would be a job you really wanted, at least at that moment. So the good news is not the beginning, but the fact that there's the opportunity. Okay. Sometimes it could be that there's somebody's hearing about the birth of a child, or there's just a lot of promise, a lot of happiness associated with the Page of Cups. Think about first dates. Think about dinner dates that are so romantic. And you pretty much are looking at that right field. When it's upside down, it's not telling you that, well, it is telling you there's nothing like that happening, but it's almost an encouragement to take care of yourself. It's an encouragement. It's to say, look, you need to do something nice for yourself. You really have to take a moment here and take yourself away for a weekend, or do something crazy in terms of getting a new hairdo or a makeover, or do something for you, because it's telling you that you need a pick-me-up in the heart/spiritual department, because we are talking cups. When you're talking about the Knight of Cups, and remember, Knights are also a state of mind card for me. I refer to this totally as a karma card. Okay, karmic relationships, upright being supportive, upside down, button heads, not being supportive. It doesn't mean that the relationship will end, but it could mean that there's a difficult, rough patch. You'd have to read the cards for the bigger answer. But it is telling you that on a karmic level, you're butting heads. But realize it's state of mind. It also could be telling you that this job you're doing, you don't really feel like doing anymore. And so you have that as well, that perhaps karmatically you've moved on past that job. And that's a possibility, you know? So the reality is that if I see that in the cards, I might be talking about how they're button heads with their spouse or their significant other, or maybe one of their children, but I might also be talking about how karmatically they don't feel like they're fulfilling their purpose. Because I'd probably be right. There's your knights. Our last couple, mom and dad, the cups. Such a great energy. The soft energy, if you will. These are home bodies. Talk about, the most attention getting might be the sword, then the wand who has the charm, and then, you get your friendly, nice little bit of socialing here and there. But then you got to the cup. The cup's like, I'm staying home. Okay, because they're sensitive, if they really are more closer to home. People, if they do socialize, it's with a familiar element, generally family. They don't take a lot of chances that way because they're very sensitive and intuitive by nature. They are the caretakers. They make the best parents, if you will. Because they're not distracted by other things as much as some of the other suits are. I've often said that when it comes to a Queen of Cup, that she does better in relationships. They're not really good when they're single. And that's true. And I'll get to that. So let's start with that queen, that the Queen of Cups, okay? Let's look at her. And she's this great mom and caretaker, and she's intuitive, and she gives really good advice because they only really advise those people that are really close to them, and they're intuitive, and they use their intuition in this ability. And she is definitely better when she has someone that she can do this with. And that's why they make really good partners. Now, the male, same can be said for him. That's a caretaker, though I have seen more men not date the King of Cups for a while because of their children. Maybe they were single dads. Again, they're caretakers as long as they have someone to take care of. And this could be true for a percentage of women as well. Although overall, both parties do better when they're in a relationship because that's what their life is about, the home. And they don't even care about they're usually artists or something. So the profession isn't even sometimes as important as the family in that home environment, okay? Especially if they're an artist, they work at home. So, or a lot of them do. But in any event, this is an interesting card because it also relates to things like commitment and promises, particularly if you're talking about the reverse King of Cups, okay? In the reverse King of Cups, there's a lack of commitment. And I don't care if it's regarding a man or a relationship or anything. I've already said to a client when I've seen this card, and I know that this didn't apply to a person, that on some level it was a she who wasn't committing to something. And I was right. So, sometimes when we don't have the ability to commit, we are looking at that King of Cups in reverse. And it's promises made that can't be kept. But when it's the female in reverse, now we're looking at an overreaction of emotion. We're looking at an imbalance because we're talking female versus male and how that energy relates to the cup itself. A cup is a more feminine energy. So each of the feminines are going to work differently. The woman be more feminine, it would be much more emotional, and it would be not dealing with reality, would be more related to an emotional reaction or overreaction. Whereas for a man not dealing with reality, and it's not to say it can't be for women, but most often for men, it's substance abuse issues. Can't deal with reality, can't commit to reality. So I'm going to drink, or I'm going to take drugs. And sometimes when you're dealing with older individuals, whether male or female, you got to watch the drugs they're taking because they may not be helpful in terms of helping these people deal with reality. In any event, I hope that helped. I tried to use keywords through each suit. And if you are someone who's interested in a private reading, please contact me through divinationcounselingservice.org. Again, my name is Colleen, and I look forward to that. In the meantime, take care and happy reading.